project in which we started our journey flying in from the United States of America to Auckland, New Zealand. First, let's meet the group and see all of our reasons for joining the journey pre-departure.
Hi, my name is Rafaela, and I want to go to New Zealand because I want to learn about Aboriginal integration and their thoughts on energy.
Hello, I'm Ria, and I'm excited to go to New Zealand because they have a very strong commitment to renewable energy, and I want to learn about the events that led to that.
Hi, I'm Ella, and I want to go to New Zealand to learn about new places and cultures, as well as their relationship to the environment.
Hi, I'm James, and I want to go to New Zealand to learn more about decolonisation and the lasting effects on the Maori culture.
My name is Naomi, and one reason I'm excited to go to New Zealand is to learn more about how they're responding to climate change.
We will split the project into 3 parts, first exploring Maori culture, then the environment, and then integrate the two for the Maori interaction with the environment. Before we understand the relationship between Maori people and the environment, we wanted to ask, who were the Maori people? From research before the trip, we learned that they were the indigenous people of New Zealand who came to Aotearoa, or Land of the White Cloud, around 1200 to 1300 AD. In modern day, their numbers represent a population of 750,000 people, or roughly 15% of the New Zealand population. However, we wanted to dig deeper than a simple Google search, so we went to New Zealand and visited tribes such as in Mitai Village and Waka Erera Thermal Village to immerse ourselves in the culture. Once there, we had the opportunity to eat their food, such as potatoes or tewa, chicken or kawakawa, and fish or pera, prepared in a large oven called the hangi. We watched their traditional ceremonies of welcome called a haka and walked through their villages to see a traditional home called kenga and meeting houses called wenhu. However, let's start at the beginning. First, we went to Auckland Museum and visited exhibits such as Maori Natural History, Ancient Worlds, Maori Court, and Pacific Lifeways to get a brief overview of Maori culture, and there we were not alone. Here is an interview from another museum visitor who had Maori roots and brought their kids as well to learn about the culture.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Alright, so what's your name?
So my name's Taylor James Brim, born and raised here in Auckland, originally from Taituputu, which is part of Ngāpuhi. I came here today to educate the kids on our history.
Really? So you've been here before?
Yes, many times.
What about this exhibit attracts you?
So not many people know that we actually originated from the Pacific Islands, like Samoa and Tonga. But we weren't really taught that side as we grow up in school, so it's kind of the reason why we're here today to teach the next generation.
That's really cool. What is specific about this exhibit? What part do you like the most, or did you think was important to teach your daughter about?
Just mainly it's the cultural, we call it tikanga, so practices that are being lost.
Yeah.
After this, we interviewed Liz, a Maori museum worker who did not wish to be on camera but was gracious in lending 30 minutes of her time to orate her story. For her, culture was a large part of her life, as it was the window to their world. She taught us the word kia ora, which means hello, greetings, welcome, and good health. From there, she explained the moko kau, that the women have tattooed on their chins below the lips, and ta moka, that the men have covering their entire faces. These markings tell a story of lineage, prose, and genealogy of both the mother and father's side, as well as their connection to the culture and land, which has especially been important to them with the ongoing treaty interpretation tensions in Parliament. Liz is passionate in passing down the culture to the children, so it can flourish for many generations and the land can be respected, as the Maori word for land is wanua, which means placenta, showing how the Maori people treat the land with respect, as one would to a mother, and regard it for sustenance. If you respect the land, it will respect you, she said. Now let us go past the museums and into the heart of the villages. First off, the Wakarwera Thermal Village, in which the tour guide lived with 20 other families and 75 members total. They assigned a chief to our tribe of learners and performed a traditional haka in which a token was offered and elaborate dance patterns performed. Our makeshift chief accepted the token, which was a branch of leaves, and gave a speech. To exhibit, we came in peace. The woman performed a spiritual dance called with a poi a weho weho, which was carefully swung to create sounds of wind swooshing to engage with nature for music, while the kids also used it to improve hand-eye coordination. The men displayed their skill at utilizing weapons such as the te aha. Everything was created from resources in the environment, such as korowai or coats made from flax, and punamu, necklace jewelry made from stone. Even transportation, such as the waka, a large canoe, was made from the kori tree and hollowed out with detailed sculptures of toi wakeru that represented men, women, and even higher spirits. The men had their tongues protruding outwards with shells in their eyes, while the women did not have the tongue protrusions as it was considered unladylike, and they were slanted sideways. These symbols came together to tell a story and were even in the traditional meeting houses called the werenu. This was a place historically used for meetings, welcoming guests, and sleeping. At the Wakarwera Thermal Village, we saw an additional graving in the wall with 4 fingers. One was said to represent birth, the second was life, the third was death, and the fourth was inverted to show life after death, which looked like the spirits, or werua, going to the spirit world after open casket farewells, as the spirit is believed to remain in the body for some time. The Maori people also cleansed their bodies after interacting with the deceased and kept the bones as protection, or at least before colonialism introduced Christianity, and there was a shift to cremation to protect the bodies of the deceased from invaders. Transitioning into colonialism and how that affected Maori culture, we learned that the Maori and British who came in 1769 under James Cook had very different ways of thinking about land. For Maori, the wanua, or land, came with responsibilities and care from the tribe that resided. For the British, land was a commodity that individuals could own and trade. As the two worlds collided, many tensions arose and political conversations began, settling on the Treaty of Waitangi of 1840. It was said that the Maori people traded their culture and rights for 2 scarlet blankets and a bag of tobacco. However, the museum we visited showed a narrative of joint benefit, where the Maori would also receive protection and opportunities to trade, connect with the world, and expand in education, although the 2 different treaties in 2 languages created misunderstandings. Even debated today, this piece of history is important in both the cultural and environmental changes throughout time. We saw the sunset at Mount Eden, rode the ferry from Auckland Harbour, appreciated flora unique to New Zealand, swam in a waterfall at the Waitakere Ranges, saw basaltic rock at Rangitoto Island, understanding the geology behind it, saw many pigeons, sheep, cows, and wildlife on trails such as this one, explored lava caves near the volcano summit, swam at the beautiful Piha Beach with the rich black sand and Lion Rock view, saw rocks such as cinder cones, and learned the terminology such as ash flow, lava, and processes of how the mantle works to create the eruption. We noted how even the same terrain could have different vegetation patterns within it, and appreciated the views. Lots and lots and lots of views. One could almost say perfect. Picture perfect? Question mark. However, we quickly learned that each small rock and plant had a function or story behind it. For example, the reason the soil was red on the volcano was due to oxidization of iron that increased in redness as we went higher in elevation on Brangatito Island. The black sand on Piha Beach was caused by solidified lava rock deposits, while the differentiation between ash flow and lava explained some of the volcanic patterns if we went past the how and tried to understand the why of the processes, such as the actual mantle heating up and causing the eruption that would shape the land for years to come. With so many ecosystems, we saw New Zealand placing emphasis on conservation through resources. Now that we have a brief overview on different biomes in New Zealand look like, we can now explore how the native Maori people interacted with the environment, as well as into some interviews of native Maori people and their interpretations on the environmental tensions and treatment of the land. Overall, as we complete the two individual sections on culture and the environment, it is now time to integrate the two to understand their interaction effects. We had a few focal questions starting off before reaching New Zealand, but we built upon them as we went to all the museums and embraced the local culture. Some of these questions that we added along the way included: do the Maori have any sustainable environmental practices that stand out to you? Can you tell me more about the Maori personification of environmental features? How is climate change affecting the environment? How do you use the environment to your advantage? What is your favorite tradition related to the environment? Have you noticed any major environmental changes in your lifetime, both positive or negative? If there was one thing you could change about the history of the land and how it has been treated, what would it be? Have the Maori been involved in environmental activism in New Zealand? If so, in what ways? Are environmental issues and climate change affecting Maori communities? Now that we had our questions all planned out, we went to the villages such as Matai Village and the geothermal village to ask local Maori people on their insights. The following are some clips on the interviews, and after this we will delve into what we took away from these interviews.
All right. So, question number. Well, first of all, what's your name for the video?
Kia ora, my name is Paora, and I am a tour guide here at Whakarewarewa o te Ope Taua a Wāhi ao.
Great. Thank you. So, question number one is, how do you think, since you've been in the village for a long time, how do you think the environment and practices of the village have evolved from the time you were young to now?
Scientists has played a big part. So we combined our Maori knowledge, not our Maori knowledge with the science, and how they work together. With the science, they do interact with each other, especially the way our people have such an affinity with the land.
Yeah. So what parts of science do you
When I went to the village, the naming of the minerals.
Yeah.
Yes, and we learned that from the scientists. They taught us, and then they told us about movement of the plates, yes, and everything. We have a different version. Our version is of how our high priest, after the arrival of our people to the country, went to explore the lands until he came across the mountains on the southern end of New Zealand's largest lake.
Yeah.
While he was climbing the mountain, he realised how cold it was, so he summoned his sisters from our homeland, Hawaii, to bring warmth to the region. They heard the call, so they sent two deities, and they made their way until they arrived at White Island,
Wow.
realising they had land to contend contend with. They raise their hands and slam them in the ground, creating the fault lines along the way, stopping at places like Tiki Tere, Hell's Gates, here in Whakarewarewa, Waimangu, Waiatapu, Orake, Korako, until they came across the mountains and found the priest.
Yeah.
So that's our version, but I've just condensed the story down to that much.
That's
How
really
our
cool.
connection to the land is.
Wow, that's amazing. Alright, she has a question for you.
Do you notice that the Maori people or people in the village treat the land differently than people from Auckland or the city?
Very much so, because that's a respect. If we start doing disrespect there, she can take this all away from us. So it's about taking care of the land. And if we take care of the land, it'll look after us.
That makes sense. And would you like to, you kind of did already, but we would like to know a little more about the religious practices of the Maori people. How would you
Now,
describe?
so much, it wasn't for us, it wasn't a religion, it was a belief. So we believed in one creator, and a lot of things that were written in the scriptures also coincided with our beliefs. That's what our people did take to Christianity.
Yeah.
That's what was written in those scriptures. We also practice and preach to our people.
There you go, easy. Alright, well, thank you so much for the
welcome.
time. You have a great day.
You too, and enjoy the rest of your travel throughout the country.
Thank you so much.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
What's your name? Tell me, I'm Maria. So we're gonna ask a few questions. You said this was your second time visiting here. Have you noticed anything significantly different in the time you first came to now?
Probably more my attitude towards the culture has changed. I was a bit naive first when I came here, so this one I'm a bit more aware of.
You know, you've got to follow the tape, follow the tape.
The origin of New
We're going to
Zealand.
go and sit under
It's a
that
bit
tree
more aware
for
of
the
that.
lunch. Okay.
Is there something specific that you learned about Maori culture that really attracts you and that you want to bring back to your home country?
Obviously my home country.
Your hometown, maybe.
Oh, no.
Okay, we'll put our bags down. Or are they
I'd
good?
love for my whole town to come up here and experience this, because it's pretty eye-opening. The birth of New Zealand, the first people that came here. A lot of people love New Zealand as well.
How do you think your attitudes has changed now that you know the origin?
Well, now that I'm more aware, I think I'm probably thinking.
Alright, perfect. Thank you so much.
We moved here from the US in 1985, so I have stayed on Maori, and I have a lot of Maori friends, and I speak the Maori language, but yeah, outside observer.
So the first question is, how do you believe climate change is affecting the environment?
The environment in New Zealand? Well, being an island country, we're like most countries in that most of the population lives very close to the sea, so in the long run it's going to be an enormously expensive exercise for this country. Now also, perhaps like a lot of other countries, yeah, we're really prone to sort of extreme rainfall events and so on. So we're expecting a big increase in natural disasters, especially if you include drought as well. But yeah, also a lot of extra flooding and so on. So the government is furiously doing a lot of research now to look at which places are most likely to be affected. So yeah, climate change is going to be a big challenge for New Zealand, but we're not the worst off because there will still be living, like even if the global average temperature rises by, so let's say, 2 degrees, at least there will still be livable places in this country where it's not consistently too hot for people to survive outdoors. Yeah.
What is your favorite tradition related to the environment?
Are we talking about Maori culture? Let's see. It's the very first one that jumps to mind, of course, is the close connection with seafood. Maybe that's maybe I'm getting a bit hungry or something like that. But yeah, I think of all the times that I've visited a marae or something like that, and there's been seafood there as a show of hospitality. Yeah, it's always appreciated because it's so delicious. But in terms of the environment, another one that's probably really generally loved by New Zealanders is the sticking to the traditional weaving. So the harakeke bush. The harakeke bush is like the New Zealand flax bush. It's not related to flax, but we call it flax all the same. But yeah, so people still doing weaving with that. Makes good sort of eco-friendly shopping bags and clothes, hats, all sorts of things. It's really lovely.
I think we're able to see some in Auckland.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Sorry, I have 2 more questions.
That's all right.
Have the Maori been involved in environmental activism in New Zealand, and if so, how?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of Maori, even today, feel a big responsibility to still, they say they're the kaitiaki of the land, which means that rather than saying they're the traditional owners, they actually more often say they're the kaitiaki, which means the guardians of the land. And I think a lot of them do really feel that responsibility quite keenly. So for generations, Maori have been putting, in our area here, have been putting a lot of time and effort into trying to protect a massive estuarine lake that's just out of town here, like just out of Christchurch, called the Waihora. The Waihora is Lake Ellesmere. And that's an example of a place where whole families have been continuously campaigning and going to hearings to try to maintain water quality and other issues around protecting freshwater lakes. A lot of it has been to do protecting rivers and lakes.
Have you noticed any major environmental changes in your lifetime?
Well, it feels like the weather's changing, but weather probably always, if I'm not mistaken, weather often does go through long-term patterns, changes, cycles, and that sort of thing anyway. So it feels like the seasons are getting later here compared to when I was in high school, Probably, it does feel like it's getting a little bit windier, although you got to be careful of the power of suggestion. I heard that was going to happen with climate change, and it does seem to me like it is getting a bit windier, but I'm not sure how the facts would back that up. But so it feels like we're getting a little bit more dry weather, a little bit more extreme temperatures, and quite windy weather.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome. Yeah, and best of luck with your studies.
I'll try my best to.
Alright, I'll ask the question. Alright. So let's start with, what's your name?
My name is Rehia.
Rehia.
Yes.
Are you from Auckland? Or are you from this area? Or are you?
I'm from everywhere in the country, but I grew up in Auckland.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I'm from here.
Cool. All right. So first question is, what do you think the importance of nature is for the Maori?
I'd say there's a big because we Maori people actually live off nature, and so I guess it is a big meaning to us as a whole as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important aspects of nature to the Maori people, or is it just like nature in general?
I'd say.
Yeah. What aspects of nature do you think are most relevant or most important to the Maori people?
For nature, I'd say it's because it's a place we all can call home. Because the nature looked after us, because we looked after the nature as well. And doing that, nature provided us food and shelter. And what we would do is also help keep somewhat clean to the environment. So,
yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. One last question. Do you think, like I asked before, that Maori people interact with nature differently to a person that's just a Kiwi or just from New Zealand that doesn't have as much ties with Maori culture? Do you think there's a different significance or
I'd say each to their own, I guess, because all Maori are different, but we all are the same as one people. But yeah, like I said, each to their own.
Yeah. So you don't think there's one specific difference or a cultural difference?
Oh, there was a big cultural difference, but
in terms of nature?
Yeah, it's not really some I can pinpoint out, but yeah, that's about it.
All right.
Sorry
Thank you
for
so
the
much.
Apart from these multiple interviews with people from the Maori culture, we did have interactions one-on-one and quite spontaneous, talking to people, learning about their culture, and we were forever grateful for all the valuable insights they shared with us and took time out of their day to try to educate students from the States about their culture. From the interviews, our main takeaways included that their interaction with the environment is very provider based, going back to our culture section where we described the word wanua, which means both placenta and sustenance, as well as land, to the Maori people. The Maori people care for the land as a sacred responsibility and do so that future generations can provide for themselves as well. In the Waka Rewera thermal village, for example, they use the Peruhua pools to take hot baths and hot wells to cook their staple diet, such as fish, crawfish, vegetables, and even corn, which we tried fresh from the Porehua pools. They had hand-woven blankets from plants for warmth, as described by the interviewee in Quake City, and timber, bark, and ferns for homes, with nature overall being deeply integrated for activities of daily living. Spiritually, it represents the ancestors of those that came before and lived the same way, which is also very sacred, as they were placed back into the earth safely for their spirit to be free and bones to protect the new generation. This is to avoid disrespect from enemies, as the remains were safeguarded through the time after colonialism. From the interviews, we learned that many people were visiting to uphold their culture and bring back certain components back home to integrate for a more environmentally cognizant way of living, such as the interviewee in our Treaty of Waitangi Museum. Also, for those who had been here a while, they did notice a change in how the land was being treated, as well as how native Maori people did have certain responsibilities to the land that was not present in New Zealanders who lived in the city for a long time. My final takeaway is that the Maori people have really transformed their lifestyle with the ever-evolving New Zealand. They still have very close ties to the environment, as we saw them use the hot pools to cook their food, as well as take baths. However, on the tours, they acknowledge changing times with the radios and cell phones, and we even stepped aside for some cars at the Wakawera thermal village. And what this taught me was that while they still respected the environment, they have integrated practices such as driving, which may not be as beneficial to the environment, but help them keep up with the advancing New Zealand and tourism sector.
Something I noticed throughout the course of the mini-term was the strong sense of identity of the Maori people. One of the people we spoke to said that throughout colonization to the present day, it has always been important for Maori to know who they are. I'm impressed with efforts to promote Maori culture, such as free language classes.
Some things that stuck out to me was that the Maori people are very welcoming and that they love to educate others about their culture. And one thing that surprised me was how much more prevalent the Maori culture presence seemed to be in the North Island than compared to in the South Island.
So one thing that I learned about just the Maori people in general was that they don't view nature as a separate entity to their culture or to their practices. Nature is completely integrated into their beliefs of just how they should treat the world around them, what benefits them, their religious practices. Nature is like central to who they are. And I think that's paramount to how New Zealand functions in general. Like the Maori culture of like putting nature first and kind of treating nature and taking care of nature so that nature takes care of you can be seen not only in the Maori people, but throughout the infrastructure of New Zealand, throughout their practices and their laws and their priorities. And I think something that other countries could take from them and maybe like use it in their day-to-day or in their laws. But yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
So the initial question that I kind of posed was, what are the effects of decolonization on the Maori culture? And I discovered in New Zealand that the Maori views of the British were actually better than I expected. A lot of people said that it was kind of mutually beneficial, the whole process, and kind of the environmentally focused culture wasn't just specific to the Maori, which to me shows how cultures can affect and impact each other to everyone's benefit, to be honest.
3, 2, 1.
We hope you guys enjoyed